I am going to come forward and just say that I am a awful cook and I hate cooking.
It's true.
So much with a passion. I like eating food, of course, but even some of these shows have made me go, could I be like a professional chef? Like, could I do this for a living? The answer is no.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Gateway to Anime. How are you all? What's going on? We are the podcast where we try and throw open the gates to anime, whether you're a new fan, a returning fan, or an anime veteran. Ever wanted to get into anime but didn't know where to start? We're the podcast for you, but if you are a grizzled old vet like we are, we accommodate you too. We're doing a lot here at Gateway to Anime. Now, if you really want to help us out, just a little bit of housekeeping, you can give us a review on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts. Actually really does make a massive difference. Well, Charlie, how you going?
Good. I'm excited to be back. It is a first recording for the year for us, so just excited to be back in the studio and talking about all things anime. I'm excited for this year and for what kind of topics that we can come up with for anime, and this one is a fun one, so looking forward to chatting about it.
Yes, indeed. Graham, how you going, mate?
Good, mate. I am ready to fill my plate and digest anime food programming. Kind of lost it.
No, not bad. Now, of course, we are doing food anime. Now, obviously food is across all animes. You're hard pressed to find a show where they don't eat food, but we are talking about shows which specifically focus on either food making, food consuming, or just the reverence of food, which you will find is massive in Japanese culture and in Japan, and of course the exports all around the world. We're also going to do something a little bit different as well. If you want to head to our Patreon, every episode now will be accompanied by a Patreon-specific episode where we'll kind of riff off the topic of the week that we've done. In these little Patreon episodes, we've decided that we're getting a little bit more loose.
If you could have one anime character prepare a meal for you, who would it be?
Hal, and give me damn bacon and eggs, bro.
I would like to go to the Hidden Leaf Village and
Ramen.
and just sit there.
Yes, that's so
I'll
much
change
better.
mine.
You're having bacon, like, what is
Bacon
this?
eggs like a
Bacon
fucking
and rolling in a
Neanderthal.
house.
Get out of this stupid castle, you bitch. If you want to join us over there, please do so. Like I say, new episodes coming out every Friday on Patreon. It's a new 2024 resolution for us. But let's jump into food anime. Who wants to start?
Well, first of all, I'll just say, like, anime and like animating food that looks like the best thing you've ever seen in your life is just like, there are so many like smash cuts of Studio Ghibli film food, all of that stuff. So like, I think it's one of those things that I think there's so many shows I watch and I'm just like, oh, don't watch this when you're hungry. Just don't. Like, it'll be painful for you. And I think it's funny because it has such a huge part in anime and what people think about anime. Like, I feel like people sometimes, there's like the anime study beats to study to.
Yes.
And there's like smash cuts of like different Ghibli food to like hip hop, like jazz lounge, like that kind of thing is what I think of.
With it.
And it's excellent. I watch them all the time. I am going to come forward and just say that I am a awful cook. And I hate cooking.
It's true.
So much with a passion. I like eating food, of course, but even some of these shows have made me go, could I be like a professional chef? Like, could I do this for a living? The answer is no.
No.
Absolutely not.
Not even
Particularly
close.
in the shows that we're talking about, which some of them are like literal fantasy settings. In fact, most of them are.
Actually, yes.
In fact, all of them are.
Yeah.
Mine's actually really realistic. We should start with one that's out this season because one of the biggest shows this season and most hyped up shows is on Netflix currently airing. It's called Delicious in Dungeon, and Sam's going to talk about it.
Yes, I am.
And this is not like, this is funny because I think our shows are all varied. Like, some of us are talking about, just ones that are set like, making like a real dish from, Italy or that kind of thing, or a Japanese dish, traditional dish, or you have Hal cooking a bacon and eggs, and that looks like the best thing ever over calcifer. Like, I like how that was the one I liked. I was like, damn, that's such an amazing dish. Like, it's bacon legs.
You don't even eat meat.
There's a bit where he like cuts bread and it looks really good. Like,
Yeah.
I guess it's just Hal doing anything looks good. So I was like,
True,
good
this is
job. But the
true,
bar's low. I was like, great job, babe.
Can I slice bread? Yes.
So satisfying. He just like, he does it with like one hand. I mean, I think it actually is impossible, but he's a wizard and I'm not going to be like,
To be fair, I have struggled my entire life with like an uncut loaf and getting the perfect slice.
It's harder than you think.
Oh, God forbid if it's a sourdough and it's got like a little hole in it. The whole
man,
loaf's
it's
ruined.
over. Game's over. Put it in the bin.
yeah, I think you need literal magic.
Yeah.
in
Or a
this
bread
case.
slicer.
Yeah,
Yes,
that'd be,
indeed.
that's something so unromantic about a bread slicer. Though.
I know. It's
Like, you
ugh,
wouldn't have like an
modernity.
anime, like fucking like, I just,
The craft of like someone who spent 50 years cutting the perfect slice of bread, and you're like, yes, sir.
Wafer thin.
Thank you.
all right, let's start with Sam.
Well, let's start with the one that's airing now, and of course, we're gonna bring this up in the mid-season check-in as well because I received an email. Well, we received an email from a fan, and hey, thanks so much, love that, and feel free to do that, everyone out there. It's really cool. We love talking about this stuff, and as a result, I was gonna skip this show because I was like, ugh.
Oh, it's incredibly popular,
Incredibly popular?
source material as well.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
one
yeah.
of the most hyped of this season.
Yeah, it was, but we missed it.
We missed a lot, but
We
don't
missed a lot
worry,
of things.
guys. I've watched every single episode of this season so far, and keep an eye out for my review of that, which will be coming out probably this week. If not, maybe it's already out now by the time you're going this. But
How many shows is that this year?
It's a lot. I mean, I'm not doing returning shows, so that cuts
okay.
out quite a
New-
bit.
yeah.
But I'm also like watching them anyway, so I ended up just watching that anyhow. So I was like, I may as well. I think it's around 30 something. Yeah.
Wow.
Good Good
Yeah.
effort.
The
I need to
commitment.
count. There's a lot of isekai. Like,
So many Isekai.
there's so many reincarnated as something villainous stories. You know what? Some of them are good. Some of them are actually good. So.
Well, it's funny you say that because the very email we received was someone saying, hey, y'all should check out some of these isekais that are coming out. They're actually really good. And this was one of them. Basically, it's a show which is currently airing on Netflix. It's made by Studio Trigger, so you might have recognized them from Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Delicious in Dungeon, basically, it's not an isekai, but it's a fantasy world. Very much a fantasy world. And sort of in this world, dungeons exist, and it's very sort of D&D style of like you crawl these dungeons and you gain loot and whatever. And a lot of these, they're all different, but this is a very specific dungeon and it's huge. It like supports, the first level is like a town, basically.
Oh, right.
And then like you can go deeper and deeper and every level is different. But the show opens, right? And they're being attacked by a dragon and they're in a deep, deep level. And basically the guys look around and it's like, oh, we're doing okay. And then he looks around and it's like, everything's fucked. Like it's a disaster. They're getting wrecked by this dragon. And then his sister ends up being eaten by the dragon, not like killed, but like swallowed by the dragon. And he's like, oh, but just before she gets consumed by the dragon, she magics them all out. So
uses
like,
an
teleports.
escape rope.
Yeah,
rope.
teleports. There you go.
What's that? Is that Pokemon? You use an escape rope, or do you use like
yeah,
a?
using when you're in the caves
you're
and
in the
stuff.
cave.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
escape talisman in various games
Yeah.
or whatever.
good
So
stuff.
basically, she uses the spell, gets them all out of there, and they're all like, "Oh shit, that was wild! Hey, like that dragon really messed us up." And then they're like, "Oh, two of the people who were with us have now left. They're out. They've joined another guild." And then the brothers, like the main character, is like sort of a paladin, sort of knight guy, was like, "Well, I'm going back in. I got to go save her, so I'm gone." And they're like, "What do you mean? We have no money. We have like half of our team's gone. Like, what are we going to do? We can't eat anything." And he's like, "Don't worry. We'll eat in the dungeon from the dungeon creatures." And they're like, "What is that?" "I have this book which tells me how to cook them all." And they're
It's
like,
like really old book.
this crusty old book, yeah.
And like I think it's a bit of a faux pas. Like people are,
It's not cool to eat monsters, basically. Well, is it? Anyway, they get in there and they're like, and there's the other two people with him. One is a mage who's like an elven mage, female. And then there's a male, like little halfling who's like, again, he's the rogue. So his job is to find traps and pick locks and whatnot. She's obviously the offensive magic user. And then they're in there and they're like in this sort of townish sort of, I guess, like base camp thing. And they're like, all right, the book says this. Let's find all this stuff to eat. And then they find, it's a score. That comes later. But they're cooking this monster and this dwarf rolls up and he's like, "Yo, cooking monsters?" And they're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You're doing it wrong." And he's like, I've spent 10 years in this dungeon learning how to cook everything. Would you let me show you? And then like he cooks this monster and uses like, and here's some like moss off this wall, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" He's like, "This will give the perfect flavor combination."
Perfect umami.
Umami flavor. And then they eat it, and they're like, "Ooh, it's pretty good, hey?" Like, because the books actually told him the wrong thing.
Well, it's like outdated. Like, it's a thing where like it tells him what he can and can't eat and how he can do it. But then it's like, obviously this guy's like perfected it, like you do with like modern cooking, kind
Yeah,
of thing.
he's like a gun of. He's just like his whole life is this.
He's got his pot.
He's got a pot that he carries with him. He's like just to cook things. Anyway, he's like, then they have it, and then they're like, "All right, let's go off and go save the sister." And then he's like, "Yo, can I reckon I could come with y'all and just like cook stuff?" And they're like, "We're gonna go fight a dragon." He's like, "I've always dreamed of eating a dragon." The red dragon specifically.
So good.
And so basically the show is just them. It's still early days. At the time of recording this, it's been 2 episodes out. It's on Netflix. And basically it's them traversing the dungeon, very much fantasy styles, very much like a D&D sort of campaign, except the show's really about eating monsters, which is obviously allegorical for how you create perfect dishes and how you use the things around you, which is very much sort of a Shinto-esque kind of belief with, and I think which is a lot of how Japanese food has become so famous, and of course the attention to detail, which goes into a lot of Japanese food. Of course, anyone who hasn't seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi, you must. It's so good. But the pursuit of perfection is a major trait across a lot of Japanese culture, but particularly sushi and food making. And this show really, and all of these shows go into this, but Delicious in Dungeon, again, it's just a real genre mashup. It's just a weird, like, I mean, they all are. A lot of these shows are just like, imagine this, but with cooking. And the reverence of food, though, and the pure reverence of like how incredible things can be and how you can use the things around you in a sort of symbiotic way, it's a delightful surprise. I look forward to it every week.
It's really funny.
It's fun.
The mage character cracks me up.
She hates it.
She hates it. She's like so off eating monsters and like, and she's so like the way they've animated her, and like I find that character really fucking funny.
She's great.
But then we'll just like begrudgingly eat it and be like, "This is delicious." But we'll just be so off it, and the main guy's like so excited by it, and she's just like,
Gross, dude.
It's yeah, it's a good show. I do recommend
I'm
it.
gonna check this out.
It's great. It's great. Like, we'll,
And they do the whole like, and this is a trope throughout all of these shows that we're talking about in anime, where they'll break down like exactly how they're cooking it, and it will be like this beautifully animated, and then it will be like slime soup or like slime like kind of thing, or like that sort of. And they bring it in a way like you would some kind of fancy meal, and it's just fun because it's obviously a mashup of like monsters and what is it, like a scorpion, mushroom slime.
The latest one he makes like karage.
Yeah,
out of an oil trap. He's like he's like, "Oh no, careful! That'll spray hot oil at you." He's like, "Hot oil? Press the trap." It's like, "No, dude, it'll kill us." And he's like got his pot ready.
That's so good.
It's really funny. So, Dungeon Meshi or Delicious in Dungeon. Check it out. Big fan.
What did you watch, Gray?
I watched Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill. I was very surprised when I saw the Mappa title flash up. I didn't know it was going to be Mappa. Right. I'm like, man, they really do be making everything. So the story follows, it's an isekai, and it follows a salaryman named Sayoshi Makuda. It kind of starts off the same sort of vibe as Shield Hero. So it's heroes, well, normal people summoned into the isekai world to obviously kill the demon lord, because God forbid if you couldn't make a character. Anyway. But his skill, like obviously there's someone who's going to be a lance or a mage or da-da. His skill is he's good at online shopping.
That's a good skill.
It's all them deals, doesn't he? He's got vouchers for days.
It's all those deals. So he thinks like the king who have trusted him to do that, he thinks it's kind of shady and something's going on, so he just decides to like, hey, my skill's useless. I'm gonna go, and they're like, yeah, cool. He sort of discovers that his skill, he opens up a window, he can buy like sauces. It's basically an online grocery store, and he uses that to basically, he wants to start a merchant business and also travel, so he hires some band of adventurers to take him across the country, and he just starts like feeding them real basic things. Like he's like, oh, this could use some soy sauce, so he's like buys some soy sauce and sticks it, and it blows their mind. So it's just one of those animes where it's just like real simple, funny sort of stuff, but he's just like pulling things out of his little store that just is changing the world. Like spices and stuff, things they'd never had.
It's like vending machine as well.
Pretty much very similar.
Yeah.
Very light-hearted, but he starts to attract attention from like legendary beasts that he makes like packs with. One of them is like an ancient wolf called Fell, who he like makes some sort of like sticky beef combination thing. So they obviously wants to like contract with him. He's like, I'll be your familiar if you feed me. And it's just that sort of escalation. He meets like a little slime, and the slime loves his soup. So he keeps like, and eventually he will end up having like pacts with gods. And he just becomes this absurdly powerful person just for his like basic online shopping skills. Like, to like, oh, I got these potatoes cheap. And he just, yeah, it's real fun. It's real simple, easy watching. Looks good. The food is probably the weaker part of it.
Interesting.
Like it's, I mean, for a food show, it doesn't go into the like the things you were saying before about like, you know, the precision and all that sort of stuff. His is just he makes like simple dishes, but it's mind blowing to these people.
Yeah, right.
Like they've never tasted anything like it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It's fun. It's light. Cooking is good, but it's more about the comedy of just like everyone's reactions to like hot miso soup and stuff like that. Like. So
Totally.
yeah, it's a fun show. I'd give it a watch.
Yeah, so it's a bit of fun.
Yeah, a bit of fun.
And the fact that he's got the portal to the other, his online shopping is his portal back to the real world.
No, he just literally pulls up a window and he can scroll for items. And he presses and it just appears in boxes in packaging.
Right.
Yeah, and he has this little storage.
So it's like magic. That's his magic skill.
Yeah, that's his
Yeah.
magical
Yeah.
skill.
Okay.
It's
so
similar to
literally,
vending machine.
stuff shows up in a box with like stickers on it, and it's just like all these, you know, kawaii stickers on it. And he's like, oh, this is my bag of rice.
Amazing.
So good.
And he can order like utensils and stuff as well. So he sort of buys himself like a gas burning stove.
Yep.
Because he sees one in the store and he's like, it's a magical item and it's like runes and stuff. And this guy does this thing and goes, oh, and there's fire and stuff. But he just goes online and buys like a 400 yen little gas top cooker, but they all like think he's amazing. Like, it's pretty cute.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cute, yeah.
There's actually another food anime airing this season called, that I didn't know, it's like a food anime in disguise. It's called like It's Time for Torture Princess or something like that. And I remember being like, I'm in for a terrible time when I clicked on this. I was just like, oh no. But it's a gag anime, and I'm not sure if it will last, like if the gag will be able to continue, but it's about this like princess who's a warrior, and she's very like King Arthur-y. She's got Excalibur and she's like leads the people. It's a fantasy world, obviously. She's got a sword that talks, and she gets captured by the enemy. She's like preparing mentally. She's like, I'll never speak. I'll never like, you know, and there's like this demon who's sent there to torture her, and she's preparing for like torture, you know, and she's like, it's going to be full on. And then they come in and they've just got like really nice food for her. They torture her with food. And she's like, and the character's really stoic, but then she just loves food. And the food, the way they've animated it is really like, it looks amazing. So it's like,
Nice.
you know, it's like
Nice.
takoyaki or like stuff like that. And the sword does a lot of the talking. It's like, she would never fall for such a cheap trick such as that. And then she's like trying to keep her cool and trying to like not to eat these. Like it's really dumb. But
Yeah, that was not. When I saw that
enjoyed
title, I was like, well, that's a shocking, problematic thing. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
going to watch.
No,
like,
I did the same thing, and I went, oh, here we go on that watch list, and then I pressed it and was like, oh, that was a pleasant surprise, like a really innocent gag.
An old bait and switch, eh?
Is
Yeah.
that the whole series is her just being tortured with food though?
Yeah.
Like, where's what?
Yeah, what's the...
How'd you get like 20 episodes out of that?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay,
I
yeah,
guess.
Time will
we'll
tell.
see.
I seen one episode, and I
Probably
laughed
enough.
a couple of times, and I went, I'm sure that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But hey, I could be proven wrong.
Could be.
Who knows?
Well, we can't have a food episode without talking about the absolute like king,
The undisputed
king.
Wow.
I mean,
I
it's-
didn't say it.
The undisputed king of food anime, the most famous one, the one that everyone thinks about when we talk about food anime, is of course Food Wars.
Yep.
Now, Food Wars, if you have not heard of Food Wars, there is a bit of a content warning on this one. It is an ecchi anime. It's a lot. It's a lot. But there's so much to like about how it's like so ridiculous and off the wall and so like of its time. You know, like that kind of 2010s anime, full on. Like, I'll just give you a quick synopsis of those who haven't watched it. I'm assuming at this point most people have watched Food Wars. It's
It's a classic.
It's incredibly famous.
For better or worse, it
Yeah.
is a classic.
It's a classic.
So synopsis: Soma Yukihara has been cooking alongside his father for as long as he can remember. As a sous chef for his father's restaurant, he has spent years developing his culinary expertise and inventing new dishes to amaze their customers. He aspires to exceed his father's skill and take over the restaurant one day, but he is shocked to learn that his father is closing up the shop to take a job in New York. Rather than tagging along with his father, Soma finds himself enrolling at the prestigious Tutsuki Culinary Academy, where only 10% of its students end up graduating. The school is famous for its shogeki, intense cooking competitions between students, often used to settle debates and arguments. His father tells Soma to surpass him and survive the next 3 years at Tutsuki and graduate there. The academy's brutal curriculum and fiercely competitive student body await the young chef, who must learn to navigate the treacherous environment if he wants to stand a chance at realizing his dreams, but is skill alone enough to let him rise to the top. So this show is absolutely bonkers.
Oh, it's insane.
The school that he goes to, the way that those shogekis are basically you challenge someone. If you're like having any kind of disagreement whatsoever, it's like a one-on-one battle. So this is really a like tournament arc of a show.
Oh, yeah.
And what you have is you just have people challenging each other.
Yep.
And the way that they're set up is like the whole school watches, and it's like an episode of, I would describe it as like Iron Chef. Do you remember that show?
It is pure Iron
It's
Chef.
Iron Chef.
I love Iron Chef.
Great show.
But so what I love about this show is that it really goes. They have like I've forgotten the name of this. Actually, a professional chef who invented all the recipes and stuff, and like consulted with the show, with the manga author and all of that, mangaka. Sorry. So like their dishes are real and they're very like amazing, and they do take a lot of like, you know, and every it's like so good. It's like similar, it's like a, you know, battle anime where everyone's power is like whatever kind of culinary style they choose. So there's like a guy that specializes in Italian food. There's a girl who specializes in like American meat, you know, like big, like she has like, she's like a butcher kind of style. Like, I love it. It's like the dumbest, like it's like Hogwarts meets Iron Chef meets, but the unfortunate reality of what makes Food Wars so famous is the ecchi side. People who don't know what ecchi is, that means basically it's like hypersexualized. They take, you know, the expression like you had a foodgasm. Food Wars takes that to a whole new level. So when characters eat the food, if it's good, they have full-on foodgasms. And I'm talking like the animation goes crazy, and there's like people like floating around and like having an orgasm, and like glistening breasts and muscles, and like it's like, you know, there'll be like a wave crashes over them. Like it goes like, it's completely wild. The most anime shit ever. Yeah. I would be so on board with this show if they just were not in high school. That's the one thing, because I think it's so like, I hate that. And like that is something that made me stop watching the show. I'm not up to date with Food Wars. I know that everyone's furious about the ending. So one day I might get back to it. You got to appreciate just how insane it is and how only anime. Like it's like same with it reminds me of like Kakegurui, the carb one.
Oh yes.
Like it's a similar sort of vibe of that insane kind of level of like ecchi, where you're almost just like, it's so unhinged and so over the top that you almost don't even, it's not like as bad as other fan servicey things, even though it is like one of the worst for it. Yeah, I think, like I was just saying, I couldn't find in Australia anyway. The first 3 seasons, the first 2 seasons are not available because they were on Crunchyroll, and then it got taken down. Netflix had the first 2 seasons. They got rid of it, but Crunchyroll has season 3 onwards. Like, so that was annoying. I couldn't rewatch it, but it's kind of seared into my brain. Like, I don't think I'll ever forget Food Wars.
Yeah.
I've got friends who are non-anime fans who love Food Wars.
It's famous.
Because I think they just find it like campy and ridiculous and so like outrageous. If you can get past the fact that they're like, you know, in school, I mean, they're designed to not look that way. Most people look like 40 plus in it, but you know, we know how old they are because they're at school. If it was a college, I'd be like all about this show, because the foodgasms happen to every character, not just the females. Like, it's like, you know, it's actually ecchi for everyone. Like, which is like, you know, I'm like, is this a wonderful feminist piece? No, probably not. But I think it's very funny, very ridiculous. And actually the way that they show the food and the way that they talk through the recipes and the way that they present it like it is their power up, you know, it's like they're talking about chakra, or they're talking about grilling, or like, you know, like, or what, like, and there's someone like commentating when they do stuff, and it's like, what, like it's the school itself is fucking crazy. The main, like, he's got a harem, of course, because it's fucking ecchi anime, the main character. But
it's anime turned up to 11.
Yeah, it's like the most anime show of all time. So the main love interest, Erina, she is like from a prestigious family, and she's got the god tongue, which means that she can like taste. Tongue? Yeah, the god tongue. That's the thing.
I forgot about the god
where
tongue.
has like the most refined palate, and like chefs will fly around the world to get her take or taste on things. It's like, can you defeat the god tongue? And there's even like, you know, his dad has like a history of the school. Like it's like it's a kind of shonen-esque,
It's
like
almost
there's a
amazing.
it kind of is though.
But
Like
kind of is also amazing. It's weird. It's a weird classic like anime. You're
close.
So close. But also because it's so fucking unhinged and off the wall and like audacious, it almost makes it good.
Yeah,
it's weird. That's weird. It's a hard one to pass.
It's a total classic. And you know what? Yeah, like if you're comfortable with that kind of thing, then give it a watch.
Go nuts.
It's
You'll love
fun.
it. Yeah.
I personally couldn't get through it, but
I do remember the food though. Weirdly, out of all these shows, I do remember because he makes that bacon wrapped mushroom thing to like that woman who comes into the restaurant and stuff. I remember him having like glistening fat cubes in one of his like first. Like, I remember the food.
The food is designed like the most etchy bit is the food. Like when you're looking at it, you're like, fuck, it's like food porn. That is what it is. This whole show is like, we're doing food porn and we're going to take anime food and we're going to dial it up and the whole thing is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think from memory, and forgive me, food war stands out here. I know there's a lot of you. He's trying to make a dish better than his father's dish, which I think is like a rice.
Yeah. Right.
And his dad's really hot.
Yeah,
and I don't think people talk about that enough. And I want that to change. So this is my campaign.
Shine a light on this. 2024 is going to be all about
hot dads.
It's Soma's dad's year.
Soma's dad's year.
Yeah, honestly, Food Wars is the ultimate food anime.
Yeah, it is.
It is. There's a bunch. So the ones that we've mentioned, though, I love that we didn't go for anything realistic whatsoever.
What? Okay.
The food in Food Wars is actual food. Like these are all dishes that people can make.
Yeah,
and
same with mine. They're just ordered through magical powers.
Exactly.
Well, this is an interesting one I'm going to talk about because I'd heard this from someone and I was like, that sounds interesting. And it's actually not dissimilar from Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill.
Really?
This one is called Isekai Izakaya. It's a weird one because it's like, obviously it's an isekai.
I never made that connection till now.
Yeah. So the show centers around Izakaya Nobu, owned by head chef Nobuyuki Yazawa and the waitress Shinobu Senki, who runs a floor. Now, it's very much a sort of traditional Japanese izakaya, and for those of you who don't know, an izakaya is a type of informal Japanese bar that serves booze as well as food. Very integral, kind of one without the other. That's not what an izakaya is. An izakaya serves food, but mostly kind of almost bite-sized, shareable food. So think Spanish tapas bar, but Japanese sharing things. Of course, you can get full meals at them sometimes as well. It's varies, but they're generally very small. It can vary, but yeah, an izakaya is a very specific thing. Also kind of like a speakeasy, I guess, because they're small and intimate, and obviously there's not a huge amount of like blaring music or anything. Intimate, food-driven.
Doesn't it translate to like micropub or something like that?
Micropub is the pretty much exact definition, yeah. And also actually they sort of popped up initially in the 700s. They sort of think back to. In the Shogun Nihongi, which is like a famous Japanese text written in 797, there's a record of King Ashihara who got drunk and was murdered in an izakaya-style venue in 761.
It's a while ago.
It's a little while ago. But they proliferated more and became what they kind of are known now during the Edo period, when they started off at sake breweries. And when they used to sell sake by weight, people would go in there and drink them in the actual brewery, and then they sort of started creating what would essentially become a tasting room, and people would start drinking the sake there before they bought their barrels, put it on the cart to get it out of there. But the first time they started sitting down was they just used the sake barrels. So that's why sake barrels you see all over the place as well. They used to be the first seating in izakayas. So
let's bring back barrels of
there
things.
you go. Let's sit on barrels.
I've sat on a few kegs in my time.
Indeed,
It's not as romantic.
No.
Anyway, I digress. So both Nobuyuki and Senki take great pride in their work and strive to deliver the best experience to their guests possible. But as the title suggests, not an ordinary izakaya, because the front door opens up to the city of Etheria, a city from a parallel universe. And then as news spreads across the lands, Itherian citizens from all walks of life attend to taste the exquisite dishes and experience the elite hospitality. And also interesting, the final act of every one of these actually goes to real life, as in they actually go and meet a chef who cooks some of the kind of meals from the show. There's one guy who does it a lot who's like, oh, in this episode they cooked this, well let me cook this for you, and cooks it and explains. There's like a narrator talking to him while he explains what he's doing. Sometimes they follow famous actors around Tokyo, and he goes to a very famous fried chicken place in Asakusa, which they talk because I did the fried chicken episode, like karage episode. It's actually fucking sick. The show, but like again, a bit like yours, the show is very much like these people from this fantasy, medieval style land go in there and they're like. And the first episode is this guy who's like been there, who knows, and it's classic when you go to these they might as well just followed me around Japan with a camera, and this is pretty much the experience you will get. Just this guy being like, check this out, and the guy walks in, and is like, oh, what is this place, like whatever, and then he's like, try this, and he's like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever had, and then it's like, try it with beer, like edamame, and he's like, drinks it then with because it's like cold ale, what is this place, like, and then they drink the cold ale and have edamame, and he's just like, oh. Which is what happens to me when I go to Japan. Yeah, so basically it's not a much of conflict. It's just people like from a different world. And of course is emblematic of people going to Japan and experiencing the culinary scene, right? Obviously. And in one of the episodes, it's pretty funny, this like really noble girl goes in who's like young, father's dead and uncle's looking after her, and like she's about to like go off and become royalty or whatever. She's very picky, shockingly picky eater. And she's like, I want something with no sour, no sweet, no fried, no this, and famously she's like, ooh, she never can eat anything that she likes. And then the chef's sitting there being like, And then he makes her something which obviously she loves, and it's this whole thing, and then she's like, so every episode someone comes in, tries to challenge the chef to be like, he can't do this.
Yeah.
But he can. And that's basically every episode. So it's weird because it's obviously a fucking fantasy world. But it's actually very realistic, and to the point where they even literally have a real chef in real life cooking in the final segment of every show.
All right.
So this guy's and very meditative, very chill, very cool. Just sitting there being like, I could eat me some karage and a smash of beer right about now. It's like
Yeah.
That's it. And it's made by Studio Sunrise, so like Bebop and whatnot. Yeah, crazy. And it looks great, and it ended in 2018. So there you go. An old seasonal from back in the day.
How good.
If you want to chill out and watch some, cool food shit, Isekai Izakaya. Good time.
Yeah, there's just something about the way that food is animated in general in most anime. There's so many, bento boxes or like lunches and there's obviously like a lot of meaning in food in different cultures.
Yes.
Which I think Food Wars does well because it doesn't just deal with Japanese food. It's like
all food.
It's all food from around the world, and they kind of do. I mean, I say they treat it with a level of respect, but they're like 2 seconds later, it's like a foodgasm.
Someone's pants are flying off.
I'm like, they treat the food with respect, and you're like, do they? With the utmost respect, the highest honor. Yeah, like making someone lunch, or providing someone with lunch, or bringing a bento for someone, or making chocolate for Halloween, making chocolate for Valentine's Day.
Chocolate for Halloween.
The old classic, eh?
Chocolate for Halloween.
Like Wednesday Addams or some shit.
I'm not supposed to give out chocolate at Halloween, I guess.
You can, yes. In a not hot take that no one will argue, I think the Studio Ghibli animates the best food.
Yeah, I don't think that's pretty hard to argue against.
Just, even in Spirited Away, like I honestly, if I were the parents, I'd be a pig immediately.
Instantly.
I'd be fucked. I'd walk in there and be like, this looks great.
kidding me?
Then I'd be like, leave me here to be a pig. Like, leave
Ain't
my
that bad?
stupid daughter, get away from me.
Go do all your nonsense.
I live here now. Thank you. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, well, I mean, and food is so important culturally to every nation, to every people, you know what I mean? Obviously, people handle it very, very differently, but like Japanese food is... And again, it's the whole izakaya thing, right? It's like food and drink cannot go together without in an izakaya. Of course, you can go to bars where they don't have food. Obviously, there are lots of bars there which don't do food. But the izakaya itself is just... And even like when you go to elite sushi restaurants, it's like the sake pairing and whatnot, and the shochu pairings and these things. It's just such an integrated thing, and it's such a big thing culturally there. And I don't know, every nation does it differently, which is really interesting. And, Japan has a real reverence for it. Many, like the French as well, obviously.
Germans,
Italians.
sausage and beer,
Italians. I mean, like
wine and pasta.
Many nations do it. Lots of Middle Eastern nations, extraordinary.
It's pretty much everyone has.
Everyone's got their stuff.
Australia is weird with our food culture because we are.
What are you talking about? A pint and a schnitty?
Yeah, a German dish.
A German dish and a European ale.
European ale. Couldn't be more Aussie if it tried. I don't know. Australia's weird because we love food. Real foodie nation.
We've got a
restaurants,
multicultural society.
Very much.
So we have like a lot of. If you ever do come to Australia, like you'll find a lot of incredible cuisines from other
all
countries.
walks of life.
Incredible. We're talking about like Australian cooking or cuisine. We don't really have. We've got a Lamington.
Australian, yes. When someone says
like
modern
England.
Australian, it's like, so French. Like,
Yeah,
it basically kind of
it's-
means like a spin on French with Aussie ingredients. Like, you know.
Only people that do it worse are the English. English has the worst food.
Oh, absolutely. No, everyone can agree on that. Sorry, Gray.
Look, but
No one likes haggis, dude.
Aussie's definitely below.
What?
Just for your input into the culinary world. I'm not saying it's. I mean, I think the food is probably the best in the world. Like,
You haven't been to
But
Japan
it's
yet.
not.
you
I
got the
know.
Asian influence, you got European.
Yeah,
Like, it's
there's-
all
Yeah,
good.
you can get
but I
good
think
everything.
what you've given to the world, like
nothing.
fairy
Oh, no.
bread, Vegemite on toast, like
Very
Have
bread's
lovers,
fucking sick. What is it like?
Cast the out.
Is it like meat pie? People,
Meat pie. I don't know if you could actually. I mean, we eat a lot of it. I don't know if you could actually. I don't know.
No,
I don't know the origins.
That's definitely got to be the British, all right? That's
Yeah.
definitely. That's definitely. You know.
Okay, fine. We're worse.
Whatever.
What's-
I'm
I
not
mean,
English.
most of the food-
Yeah, I was
I
like,
come
why are
from
you
a
getting
culture
upset?
that eats sheep lips, for fuck's sake. Like, I mean, you know,
Every nation's got the. You know.
we got haggis, and that's it.
Haggis. Yeah.
So, ooh, a nice pot of soup. Like,
It's in this.
no
don't worry
legs,
about
too
it.
standing. Yeah, exactly. It's fine. Keeps you warm. The winter's coming.
Yeah. I'm talking like I don't adore, like my partner always says that the way that I cook is like I run a medieval tavern. Like I just have like, I'm like,
hog
you'll have a stew and you'll eat the bread.
Hey,
Like,
stews
it's
are wicked. Like,
so fucking, like it's all I can make.
How did you make gruel?
Like, honestly, that is my cooking. So I can't really complain about anything when I cook the way that I cook. I don't even think anime could make it look good.
But just quickly before we stop, I just want to talk a little bit about like how sushi came into being. Because I think it's kind of interesting. Obviously, it's such an iconic
Yeah, of
dish. You could do a whole podcast series just on sushi. You know what I mean? Like, so I'll just give you a very basic thing. But so it actually began with the proliferation of rice paddy fields, obviously, where fish was actually fermented with vinegar, salt, and rice. After which the rice was discarded. We're going back. But the earliest form of the dish was created around the Yayoi period, so early sort of Iron Age time. But during the Muromachi period, which was 1336 to 1573, the rice began to be eaten along with the fish. And then during the Edo period, so from 1600s to 1876, vinegar rather than fermented rice began to be used. And that's obviously now what is much more modern. The vinegar and rice. Actually, what sushi means is vinegar and rice. That's actually the actual definition of sushi. Fish, no, it's not actually the definition.
it's the vinegar and the rice.
Vinegar and rice, and that's why, you know, in Jojin's Sushi, which I mentioned earlier, the guys who start working there spend 3 years making the rice before they're even allowed to touch a fish. 3 years, because the vinegared rice is actually the real thing when you get to elite sushi that differentiates. Obviously, of course, the fresh fish you get, but the actual, like, the real thing is how you vinegar the rice. That's like the big thing. Invention of rice vinegar basically changed the game and gave birth to the nigiri style of sushi, which we know today. And its creation is attributed to a guy called Hanaya Yokai around 1824. And it actually became like the fast food of the Chonin class of the Edo period. So Chonin class being the merchant class, who was subordinate to the samurai class, who was subordinate to the nobilities. And then, of course, through the years, it's become, you know, an elite fine dining experience. But yeah, I don't know, interesting. How
That's
it's
very
changed.
interesting. Yeah.
But no, I think it's amazing. And like food is just, as I said, it's so important culturally and especially in Japan. And I just think anime does it so well. And again, like so many things, they just mash those genres up and you'll find a food anime in all sorts. Lots of isekais and lots
Surprising
of medieval
amount of
fantasy
isekais.
style things. It just lends itself well.
it lends itself to comedy a lot too.
It does too. True, yes.
But yeah, I think Food Wars is the ultimate to me.
Yeah, it's the seminal classic.
That's
yes.
it. It lends itself to anime as well because it can be treated like a power system with
Yes.
the prep and all of that kind of stuff, and
Yes.
just the way that like action packed or like comedy with food.
And slice of life, obviously.
Yes,
A
but
lot of slice of life shows.
it looks so nice, you know.
Yeah,
Delicious in dungeon.
delicious,
That's
as they say.
as they say.
But yeah, because Isekai Izakaya, obviously fantasy world, but actually I would say it's more of a slice of life show than an Isekai or a fantasy show.
You're right.
So, but again, all forms, all sorts. And hey, if we've missed anything, hit us up. Let us know. I mean,
Definitely missed
we
heaps. I reckon.
we could
100%.
do so many shows on this, and like we could just do a show on Ghibli food, and we may do down the line.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually would like some recommendations because it's not a genre I gravitate towards. You know, mostly because I'm triggered by my lack of cooking ability, so I don't want to watch it.
clear.
But I would like to because I think it can be a very wholesome. I mean, I know I just talked about Food Wars, opposite of wholesome, but I do think it lends itself to wholesome kind
Yes,
of vibes
yes.
as well. So hit me up with some wholesome recommendations.
Yes.
If there is any.
If they exist, which they certainly do. Hey, thank you all so much for listening. Charlie, Graham, appreciate it. Always a good time. So thank you very much. Now, just some housekeeping as we head out. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you like us and you dig what we're doing, you can find us on Patreon, where we are doing extra episodes every week as of 2024. Exciting times. Obviously, find us on patreon.com. You'll also get early releases to the normal episodes like this one too, and behind the scenes. But of course, if you want to follow us on our social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, you can find us on our website, www.gatewaytoanime.com. Leave us a 5-star review if you are a listener, even if you aren't. Just jump on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, give us a 5-star review, write a little thing on Apple Podcasts if you want. Like I say, actually makes a big difference, and we'd really appreciate it if you take the time to do so and you like what we're doing. So, thank you so much, Charlie, Graham, always a pleasure. Catch you next time on Gateway to Anime. Have a good one.